Welcome back to the Madison Advisory AI Podcast. This is a space for thoughtful conversations about leadership and decision making, especially in environments where complexity is high and the right path isn't always obvious. Today's guest doesn't get called when things are going well, he gets called when deals blow up. Robert Stevens has spent decades working inside restructurings, receiverships, and high risk situations where capital, ego, regulation, and reality collide. His job isn't to predict success, it's to restore value after failure. And increasingly, that work is being shaped by AI, not as a buzzword, but as a tool for precision, speed, and forensic clarity. Today, we're talking about landmines, denial, discipline, and what leadership looks like when no one wants to admit the deal is broken. Robert, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you here today. You've said that you typically get brought in when deals blow up. For you, what does that actually look like in the first 72 hours?
So typically there's a run up before we get brought in officially, and it can be accompanied by what I call kind of the confidential call, where somebody says, "Hey, can I run something by you? Hypothetically speaking, if this happens and that happens, what do you think about this and this and that?" So I get more of those than I do actual projects and cases to work on because people kind of figured out that I'm kind of the cone of silence. I don't kiss and tell. So if somebody comes at me and quite frankly names that people on your podcast would know
Hmm.
and say, I'm in this stupid deal and this happened and that happened. What's my exit? What's my risk? That sort of stuff. So there's a lot of consulting and free advice that I give to clients and resource people in every case. But if it's post that where they've kind of gotten to the point where they've resigned themselves to the fact that, hey, we're going to have to do something drastic. This is not going to work. And that can be through several rounds of we're going to give them another try. We're supposed to have an agreement by Friday. Those things are the stall tactics of the failed business, which it's terribly common and it just happens. But when we get brought in, the first thing we have to do is, if it's a judicial appointment, is notify all the powers at be that there's a receiver in place, that there's a new sheriff in town. Typically, with a receiver appointment, then there's also a stay of execution of judgment. So I get to stop garnishments, collection activities, every lawsuit that the company might be a defendant to. It all stops, it all pauses, which is great.
Okay.
If I'm coming in just as an advisor or a CRO, that's different because you don't have any of those types of protections. You just come in to do that. Those we're working on one right now. Those tend to be what I call a voluntary surrender, where somebody says, "Uncle," they go, "I've really given this a whirl. I've tried my best. This is all we can do. Here's the keys," and to go from there. But
What's
you know, it,
when you come in, what's typically the earliest signal that people are ignoring?
I said the earliest signal is investors tend to be positive. They focus on the good outcome. We're going to do these great things. They can enter a little bit of denial phase where they think, if I don't look at it, it's kind of like the difference between men and women in the doctor's office, right? Women have this system where they go regularly, they do their thing. Guys will say, I think I'm going to ignore it and see if it goes away. So it tends to have a little bit of that male element where people will just kind of ignore it and think that things might turn around, things might get better. And experience has taught me the longer you wait, the worse it gets. It really does. Things don't get better, especially if companies are bleeding money. There's really you need to make a move and take some sort of action, whatever that looks like.
What is the cost in that instance of waiting too long?
It can be total disaster. It can be total loss of investment. In a lot of cases, what you'll find, as you know, with some of these institutional investors or even large family offices or networks, is that there's more to it than just the money on the line. So maybe they've guaranteed something. That's happened before, where people will say, we'll guarantee your trade lines so you can get terms on your receivable. So maybe you get 30 days net. Well, maybe if we guarantee it, you get 90 days net. So then they can be walking into collateral damage on that side of it, which has financial and reputational risk that can be pretty huge.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that aspect of it, that there is additional, just besides the original investment, other collateral that could be on the line. When someone calls you, what have they already avoided really admitting?
I try to get like put on a therapist's hat and get him to just be honest. You know what I mean? Just say, look, what else? Lay it on me. And in most cases, once they're talking to me, they're over that emotional hump. Do you know what I mean? They come out and say, all right, so then, they tell me maybe more than I wanted to know. They
So
tell
a
me
lot of
all
times
of
they've
the
gotten there by the time they're picking up the phone to reach out to you.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And there's also been a lot of deals that they've gotten what they wanted without having to hire me, which is always kind of entertaining because the target company will say, "No, I know who that guy is. What do you want? What I don't want to have to deal with him. What do you want me to do? Just tell me what to do and I'll do it." That does happen, um, which is it's a win for them. It's good karma for me. It doesn't really give us any business or any work, but you know that's just part of the game.
Yeah, hopefully the good karma does come back around for you. In
It
your
tends
business,
to.
there you go. And you've typically described yourself as the business guy, coordinating lawyers and accountants. In that role, what does good judgment look like?
So I've said this before, like people that do what I do tend to be one of three personality types or professional types. They tend to be lawyers, accountants, or business guys. And I do have a legal background, Pepperdine, go Waves, but I'm not a lawyer. So I'm an operator and a business guy. Lawyers do very, very well if it's really legitimately fraud. If it's a Ponzi scheme or something terrible, they do a great job at quarterbacking those types of cases. Accountants are great as receivers if it really is just the fact that we just can't figure out where the money's going. We can't figure out the books. We got to try to put this thing back on some kind of a financial footing. They can be great for that, but they fill just those specific roles. And what I do is I quarterback both the lawyers, the accountants, and other advisors to really try to turn the thing around. Our expression internally is we like to see if we can't turn the chicken salad back into a chicken. That's kind of our thing. And that requires a really broad-based skill set to really make it go. Um, you can't just run in. And also, if you have a lawyer, like a lot of times the investors will be, of course, talking to corporate counsel in before they ever reach out to me and saying, what can we do? And lawyers, I work with them all the time. It's kind of an occupational hazard. They are victims of procedure. There's a class in law school called CivPro, which is civil procedure, and they live by that. We have Rule 26 disclosures. We have 21 days to respond. We can waive service of process. We can file a 12b6. That's where their head goes, and that's not that it's not extremely valuable and extremely useful, but on the big overarching aspects, you got to have a game plan. And the game plan, this is from me years ago. There's nothing more frustrating than winning a lawsuit and thinking, hey, I got something, and realizing that didn't really do anything now. Now I got to figure out, how am I going to enforce it? How am I going to collect on it? What's the next move beyond there? So that's really what our team does, is to say, what's our workout? Our workout is to sell this business and get you paid. Okay. Our workout is to get old management out of the business completely. Equity, employment arrangements, everything out, and get somebody else in there to run the operation and move it forward, depending upon what the case is.
So you need to see what the conclusion or the aim of the conclusion is before you really get started, and you're able to bring all of those other counterparties together with you throughout the process, but they may be more singularly focused in their role.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hate to quote, it's a little bit trite and it's going to show my age, but Stephen Covey would always say, begin with the end in mind. So once you figure out what the problem is, you got to figure out what's the end. What are we trying to do? It could be something simple, like to say, okay, we're in this thing for $20 million. I want to get something back. I want to get some cash back, whatever that looks like. the investment's not going to work, but um, they own some real estate, some IP. What can we get for this business? What am I going to get for assets to get back? Or it could be this has so much potential. It's just been squandered and it really needs to be turned around, put on solid footing and moved forward. That's, but you have to do that first. You can't get stuck in the weeds in the procedure. And also, you can't get stuck in the emotion of the situation. There's a lot of hurt feelings. In the mediation space, we call it multiple realities, where there's one existing situation, but everybody looks at it just completely differently.
Given that you typically can see the end and then work to get there, what separates a salvageable situation from a write-off?
So it starts with the mindset of the investor. The mindset of the investor, depending upon what type of play they usually do. If they are a family office that really takes an active role in the management of the business, they may really want to try to turn the thing around and make it a legitimate business asset again. If it is strictly financial institutions or large passive investors, they're concerned with. There's a great quote by Roy Rogers. He said, "Everyone's concerned about the return on investment." He said, "I'm more concerned about the return of my investment." Here, that's the institutional mindset, is to say, and they do it. That's your background. I mean, they do it from a very surgical place. We've got 20 things we've done. 18 of them worked out great. These other ones are not going to be a winner, but I want something back and I want to finish it out this year. They want to do that. Like before the quarter's in, I want to write that off so that we can, move forward on the rest of our investments in assets for the next quarter or period or whatever.
Right. Yeah, their perspective can be completely different than a family office, if you will. But
Yeah. And also if there are regulatory issues involved in a company, that can be a factor for, do they want to try to do something with it or not? Because they don't, there's an old saying, the Viking saying that says, don't roll around with swine lest the smell get off on you. So, they don't, especially if it's a really notable investment group or bank and there's some kind of a fraud involved, they don't want to have anything to do with it. They want to try to isolate themselves and insulate themselves 100%.
which makes sense. How often are you involved when there are regulatory issues at hand?
There's always something. It could be something minor. Um, it could be something major, but I would say there's always an inkling of it possibly being a factor. So even if there isn't any kind of an inquiry or enforcement action, we operate from a position that that's a real thing that could happen in the case. So we need to be aware of that on the front end of it. And that goes back to good counsel, really having somebody that knows those aspects of the law. But and it could be, everybody thinks Ponzi scheme, SEC, fraud, whatever else, but it could be something out of left field. I'm working on a case right now where it's a manufacturing business, and we got some inquiries from the Nuclear Regulatory Agency, and it's not a nuclear company. But there's this interesting crossover that gives them jurisdiction over certain aspects of the business. But yeah, you got to be thick-skinned, and you got to have some experience in dealing with the regulatory people, because they operate from a completely different angle than the rest of us.
And have good counsel. It's always
Yeah,
key.
they have unlimited counsel, right?
Yeah. You're using AI in a very practical way, not theoretical. Can you walk our listeners through your workflow?
Sure. So in our business, we for a lot of the cases, we'll use Perplexity as an AI platform. They've got a good enterprise system, and what we'll do in that instance, and you could apply it to anything else. Let's say you love Claude or Chat or Gemini or whatever else, is we create spaces or we create projects within the AI itself. So get into a company like one of we're working on, and I will link its Dropbox business account to Perplexity. So I've got, I think, 2,500 or 2,600 different files and folders that are all uploaded in Perplexity there. So I can use that to do what would have taken me a room full of people a month or so to go through stacks and stacks of paper, and I could just ask it point blank questions. Create for me a report of all the bank statements for this company and its entities, and do so for the last 2 years, and then itemize them. So then, boom, it doesn't even take that much time. You come back and you've got this nice PDF that has all those on there. Then you can say things like, look through that and try to determine if there's any transfers in or out of the accounts for more than $10,000 that involve this person or that person, or give me a list of every vendor that has received any amount over $500 more than twice a year for the last 3 years. So you can immediately go through and figure out if you're trying to either find fraud or scratch it off. You can do that.
So a lot of it is about having the right questions now. Since you have unlimited access to the information and ways to sort it, it's about asking the right questions in whatever program you're using.
Correct. And that's about a good master prompt, right? If you have the right prompt when you sit down to do it, then you're going to get the good responses. It just saves so much time. If there's a dispute, let's say there's a former employee, and the former employee is wanting this or claiming that, I can go through and read all of the company's emails, the employees included, and come up with a 20 or 30 page report of what actually happened. And that's a 10-minute opportunity. So it saves so much time. And it also, it just, because of my background in securities and in general, I mean, I've always thought that data and retention of data saves you. It doesn't, people try to hide things. Oh, I don't want to see this. But I found that the more data you have, the better position you're in. You have the opportunity to figure out, what really happened, and it protects all the parties at B, or in the situation. But that's kind of the really the base groundwork thing that I will do in that instance.
I can see it really transforming your capabilities in general, having AI be your teammate in that instance. Has it transformed what your clients expect from you?
Yet I wouldn't say necessarily that it's transformed their expectations. I would say that it's been a real source of relief for them, because in the case of troubled companies, the investors they're like the last person to know. And just like in dealing in personal relationships, if somebody's not telling you something, they're not talking to you, they're not telling, where does your mind go? It goes to the worst, right? It's the worst. Oh my gosh, they're doing this. So you don't have any access to flow of information. So the instant we can go and take the players and give them information, the feedback I get is relief. It's just
Okay.
tremendous amounts of relief. Even if the information isn't what they want to know, they might want me to say, we've only been in here a week, but I can sell the business and you can get all your money back. There you go. They would love to see that. Even if it's not that, just the fact that they have information access and flow. And we use a few of other kind of off the shelf stuff. One that I recommend is called X1, the letter X, the number one. That's a pretty good, it's about $150, $200 a year that you can, and it's a deep dive search engine is what it is.
Okay.
I will recommend that. And I think we'll do is try to QBO, QuickBooks Online, as much of the data as I can, and then give everyone a view-only user, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I teach them how to use it. If they don't, then they have access to the information that usually they've not had access to, has been withheld from them for a period of years or whatever else. So that's, those are just some of our base level stuff.
It's very interesting how insight can just bring so much ease in a tense situation, and how AI can help alleviate
Isn't it
that
funny? I
tension.
mean, yeah, and I always, it's counterintuitive. A lot of things are counterintuitive. And the counterintuitive is, you would think things that are good would be perceived as good. You would think things that are bad would be perceived as bad, and you don't know. especially if it's stakeholders that are not, that may have some kind of you'll find this with individual investors. You'll find it with family offices. You will not find it so much with institutional big, large dollar passive money. But with the private offices, the big investors, whatever, they can be emotionally attached to these things. I mean, to the point where it's you have to, if you're wearing my hat, you have to be a little bit, a little more therapist than advisor to let them talk about what's going on, because otherwise they can perceive just administrative things as some sort of an attack or
Right.
some sort of, you file a status report and people hit the roof, even though, hey, I'm required to do that. I didn't see anything about that in there. I didn't, it's, it's just part and parcel for the cases.
It is interesting how being an advisor does go hand in hand with being a therapist, and I've found that very true in my work as well. Uh, has AI ever failed, or where does AI typically fail in distress situations?
The only times that I really have complaints about AI is that, you've got to give it content, right? You've got to give it as much information. If you want it to analyze what you're looking at and what you have, you just cannot. You got to be very methodical about it. You got to be very certain that all of that information is there. So that can mean you've got to get in and, uh, you know, uh, upgrade your AI subscription, whatever it looks like. Make sure you've got the one that will support what you need. People that try to use the free versions of these programs they're setting themselves up for failure. It's going to constantly come back to you and say, I don't know what you're talking about or whatever else. The other thing is, if you don't spend enough time with a good master prompt and your role that you're trying to have it fulfill, you're asking for trouble. If you're asking it to pump out content, like write me a synopsis of this, of that, you have to be very careful. I am working on a status report, and I said, here's the data. It's in this over here. Write me just a brief overview. This is my format that I always follow. It goes like this, 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 this. Write me a status report, and it's making claims that I can't put that on a. I can't. It starts using these really kind of glossy words.
Creative licensing.
Yeah, in another great show of productivity, the government went, achieving this, that, and I'm going, no, that's not it. You need to tone it down. It's not cut and paste is where I'm going with it. It's,
Right.
but it is the equivalent of having 2 or 3 assistants. It really is. And a lot of it, the work that none of us want to do. None of us. I mean, I shouldn't say none. We've all known the people that the big firms keep in a corner office in the back, that he's in early and leaves late. He never makes eye contact with someone. And just the thought of obsessing about stuff is right up his alley. That's that's a thing. But the AI doesn't get fatigued. I can keep having it look through things over and over again, and it doesn't get tired. It doesn't get fatigued. But it's been very effective.
Yeah, I always say that human element is so important to keep in line, but that's one element that AI has that humans don't. The never gets fatigued, and we certainly do. Oh, how do you think turnaround professionals should be thinking about AI, and whether they should be thinking about AI differently right now?
I think that turnaround professionals need to rely on it as a tool, that it's absolutely a necessary. I think Dan Martell said, he said, you got to understand that when you're defining your business, you should be saying not, I am a general contractor using AI. You should be an AI business that's involved in the general contracting space. If you really want to try to use today's technology and move your business forward in the best way.
I have heard that before too. And that's interesting how a lot of different businesses are taking on that lens or wearing that hat of AI businesses in X, Y, or Z. You've spent nearly 5 decades in Taekwondo,
I have.
taking a turn. How has that taught you about conflict, and how does that translate into your work?
So my taekwondo background, just to bring up my least favorite topic, which is myself. I started in 1977 in taekwondo, which the word taekwondo has been around since the 60s, but everybody called it karate in those days. The Koreans that immigrated thought the way to say taekwondo in English is to say karate. So they would brand it as that. But it was originally a father-son activity. We did it through our fourth degree black belts into the early 80s together. And now it's been a family thing. My two daughters are 22 and 26 and are both fifth degree black belts in taekwondo. But it's the practice has been a really, for what I do, it's a stress relief that is difficult to quantify. It's so much better than just hitting the gym or going for a run or whatever else, because it addresses your internal frustration releases, as well as it's a social activity. It's not something you do by yourself. Put the headphones on and turn the treadmill on for 30 minutes and then go take a shower. It's really things you do with other people. I was a competitive fighter when I was a young kid, and you deal with that kind of amygdala kind of response when you're in this combat zone, and that's really a lot of what you run into in turnaround situations. You a lot of conflict, a lot of aggression in some cases. That it does give you the foundation to be able to, not so much that I'm going to go up and foot sweep somebody and hit them over the head, and not so much that, but as much as I'm not afraid to go up and approach somebody and say, I understand you're angry. You have a right to be angry. How should we work this out? Give me some information here, and not feel like um, something is going to happen to me. It in very, very rare cases, only one in the past probably 25 or 30 years of doing cleanups have I run into an actual physical altercation on a case, and nothing came of it. There wasn't a Walker Texas Ranger kind of an episode or anything along those lines, but there was a physical kind of undertone in the case. But it's been a great part of my life and has given me a lot of stability and a lot of foundation.
And do you think it's given you more mental stability in conflict situations than having the discipline of Taekwondo?
Without question. Yeah, without question. It gives you that just that other escape is really the other thing about it. I think as a professional, the times that I haven't had the luxury of being able to train 5 days a week, where I've been maybe stuck in some sort of a thing, it can be difficult to get your head out of whatever the issue is you're struggling with. And that's just absolutely paramount and key that we have an opportunity to step away, clear our head, get the cobwebs out, and go back to whatever it is you're working on. And that is really just a huge blessing and a huge skill and thing that can apply to everybody. It's easy for people to say, well, you've done that for 50 years. Of course you can do that. But it doesn't matter. You could be a 2 or 3 month student and have all of the same benefits that you would otherwise.
That's interesting. Maybe we'll have some more Taekwondo athletes after this episode.
I think the number is there's 150 million practitioners worldwide so far. It's the number one martial art in the world. And part of the reason it's such a great one is it is kind of the big tent. You can be sleight of build. You can be the tough guy. You could be the person who's intimidated and scared. You can be. It really allows for a lot of that. I have only daughters, and they didn't really. If it was going to be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is another great martial art, they wouldn't be terribly interested in that. In wrestling with somebody and then hold them down and pounding their head with their elbow. That wouldn't sit real well with them. But Taekwondo, just because of the fact that it's open and is applicable to various ages, body types, everything else, it works. You don't have to be a 20-year-old athlete to enjoy it. We've had students as young as 5 or 6 to as old as 90.
Wow.
Yeah, all over the place.
It's quite the range. I didn't realize that 90-year-olds would have the stamina or ability to practice as well.
They absolutely can. And there were a couple of studies done on basically older people and exercise and training in general. And the study was they took weight training into an old folks home with little old ladies in like a minimum age of like 85 and had them start lifting weights. Um, and they found that even at 80, they started to increase their bone density and their muscle mass. So if you can do it then that's a kind of a takeaway message.
Very true. On Taekwondo, when you enter the room, given your level and your expertise, people stand when you walk into a room. In business, they don't necessarily do that. How do you lead when that respect isn't automatic?
Well, one of the things, we all have a need for significance. Like sound a little bit like Tony Robbins, but it's true. We all have a need for that. And one of my pat pitches is to say, I get a lot of that already. I mean, in my martial art, I get all of the significance that I could ever want. As a ninth dan, if I go to a testing and I walk in the room, it's true. Like everybody stands up. Everybody stands up, comes to attention. So if I walk into a conference room to try to negotiate a deal or a settlement or some sort of a workout, and people sit in their chair with their arms crossed, giving me this, it's okay. It's fine. Um, and it's also important in those types of situations to kind of check your ego at the door. Just say, I'm here to do a job. That's another one of the pitches that my team has to listen to me say all the time, which is, this isn't my money. This is your money. This is a project from me. Um, you're not offending me. It doesn't bother me. I'm just doing my job here, and that's all I'm doing. I want to do the best job I can.
That's great. And I think Taekwondo is it's just an interesting aspect that you bring to your business based on your background. To close out our conversation today, if someone feels that oh no moment in a deal, what should they do immediately?
The two steps would be to reach out to get counsel on board. That would be the first thing, and then just tell them, look, I'm not telling you to sue anybody. Just keeping you in the loop on what's going on with this. I want you to be up to speed. It can be the best half hour of legal time you can spend is just a little proactive. Just say, this is kind of what's going on. Second one is to find a firm like ours or somebody like me that can look at the situation and give you an objective review and just say, because we all think the same things when things aren't working out. We think, am I crazy? Am I missing something? Is there a message there? What am I looking at? And when you see a lot of the repeat patterns, we get a lot of messages on Friday afternoon because that's typically when the guys that you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. The guys that screwed up the deal, right? Oh, I'm going to get you something by Friday. I'm going to whatever. And then Friday comes and Friday goes and they missed the cutoff. They missed the times. They missed this. They didn't provide it. And they say, geez, I don't know what I'm supposed to do from here. And really the idea being, we all need calmer heads. And even if for myself or whatever, if it's something that I'm involved in as an investor, I'll always ask somebody else too. Am I off my rocker here? Is
Hmm.
this the Viking temper popping out, making me want to, put the horned hat on and grab an axe or am I blowing this out of proportion? What do you think? So that would be the two things to do. And then also those are external and then internal. The internal game you need to play with yourself is to write stuff down and let it go and come back to it. Don't stew on it.
Okay.
Stewing it doesn't do any good. Um, but that's just really the key thing. Write down and be tangible. We've lent them in 6 tranches, $2.8 million. That's that. Second one, payments under the note stopped on December 1st. Today's February 17th. Okay. Get real specific on that because it can clarify your position. Because as I mentioned before, if you don't know exactly all the information, your mind kind of runs off on a tangent sometimes. And we
Right.
think, oh, they haven't paid us in 2 years. And you look back and you go, no, it was 8 months. Oh, okay. And that's not exactly true either because you said this and this and this, and then they didn't pay you because you gave them a grace period. You remember when you gave them I don't remember that. So get tangible about it, um,
Okay.
and come back to it.
And what is one mistake leaders consistently make when something starts to unravel?
There's always one and it's in every single case. Guess. Guess what you think? Guess what it is? Any guesses?
I would say wait.
That's the one.
All right.
Waiting too long, it doesn't get any better. It's not gonna if things are already looking not kosher, it's really time to start looking at it then. I mean, I've got a case that I was on and they said, well, this is what it is. Okay, it's medical testing. All right, good. It's good business, medical testing. A lot of a lot of subsidies there, a lot of money there, a bunch of angles, the cash pay angle, the private pay angle, the insurance angle. Well, by the time they got down to bringing me in, the thing had unwound so badly. And in fact, in that case, the principal, I haven't kept my eyes on it because it's not really my fight, but the principal was indicted, and is going to go to prison. It looks like maybe 20 years. But that's another case where there could have been something recovered, but they just didn't do it. They didn't pull the trigger soon enough because they're afraid that if you do that, in a lot of cases, the reason they don't want to pull the trigger is they're afraid it's going to, that it's a permanent thing. By that, I mean, this is not a divorce. You're not divorcing your husband or wife. You're stepping in to try to take prophylactic actions. Consider the difference between saying you're going to go to a therapist or you're going to go file a divorce case. They look at taking any motion as being something permanent. Oh man, I don't want to cut my hand off here. I don't want to do that. When it's it can be necessary just to do it. Yeah, don't wait. Do not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's a statement to human nature in general. When we're afraid of things, we wait. And deals don't typically fail all at once. And so do not wait once you see those signs. We've talked through a lot of things today that our listeners can take
Right.
take guidance on.
There's the three phases, right? People would say fight or flight, but that's not correct. There's three F's: fight, flight, or freeze. And freeze is most of it. Freeze is most of what people do in physical confrontations. That's what they do. They don't just somebody starts getting in their face. They don't just grab their purse and run right out the door. They don't do that. They also don't necessarily pick up a bat and start hitting the person. They just freeze. And we do that in business a lot, where we just stop, we freeze, and then not understanding that not taking an action is an action,
Exactly.
and usually a bad one at that.
And in today's world, we do have a lot of tools to help us take action. And I think you've walked us through in a very succinct way today some of those tools that can help all of us learn and move forward. I really appreciate you taking your time to spend with the Madison Advisory AI podcast today.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very kindly.
And for our listeners, thank you for listening. Until next time.